We're very much sticking to our conference theme of digitization, the new norm, and we've just come out from a very interesting panel moderated by Danny Jagannath, which we've all been hearing and understanding the same views that we all have and have emitted from us over the years. My name is George Gobin, and I'm a director with the TTMAG, and I'm very pleased to be your facilitator for this panel today. Now, according to cybersecurity ventures and cyber attacks are on the rise, and they're really estimated to cost at the end of 2020, cyber attacks were estimated to cost organizations around 20 billion US dollars. That's really a whole lot of money, $20 billion, when the risk or entry is very such low, and all you have to be able to do is a good fisher or be able to get on the dark web to get ransomware or malware that's available for you for a cheap price. As defined by CISA USA, cybersecurity is the art of presenting or protecting, networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information consistently. We have all become very heavily reliant on the internet for communications, entertainment, transportation, online shopping, health, etc., on various types of devices. The COVID-19 virus has exacerbated use of terms like digital transformation as an, in fact, increased reliance on use of the internet to conduct our businesses and, in fact, to conduct our daily lives. However, as our reliance and usage of these systems have increased, a new breed of criminal has further emerged out of the shadows, known as a cyber criminal, who is constantly trying to gain access to our computer systems. And he did this initially as a subject of self-satisfaction and self-aggrandizement. But now more and more, we are seeing this as being used as a source of ill-gotten wealth. Computer viruses have been around for a long time since the advent of computers first started proliferating in the 70s. And what we are experiencing now seems to be modern day versions of this, with technologically advanced software that has morphed into new words in our vocabulary, like phishing, like spear phishing, social engineering, denial of service attacks, man in the middle, cross-site scripting, and most recently, a lot of ransomware attacks being administrated or run on the web. The panel that we have brought together today will discuss what we as individuals, businesses, academia, and governments should know about this menace, and how do we protect ourselves from financial ruin, loss of privacy, loss of intellectual property. This panel will seek to use known cybersecurity breaches to illustrate the costs and harms incurred, whether financial, personal, or otherwise. What we are hoping for at the end of this panel discussion, you as our audience today will leave with a much better understanding and perspective of cybersecurity and the steps you need to protect yourself, your family, your business, and your employer. Let me first of all introduce you to our illustrious panel, one by one, as I ask them to give a 5-minute overview on the topic and their take on it. I will only do short bios, and their full bios will be available at our website on this event page, www.igf.tt. This panel that we brought together really brings a lot of industry experience and guarantees that they will do justice to this topic, cybersecurity, the new norm. The first panel, this turn, I'd ask Kerry-Ann Barrett to ensure her camera is on so we can all see her. Kerry-Ann is the Cybersecurity Program Officer with the Organization of American States. In her capacity, She offers technical assistance to member states in the development and implementation of their national cybersecurity strategies, as well as assist in the implementation of various technical projects with the cybersecurity program. She's also an attorney at law with over 13 years of experience, spanning both Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. In addition to her legal professional experience, she has had appointments with the Ministry of National Security, Trade and Industry, Labor and Small Micro Enterprise Development, including legal consultant to the CARICOM Secretariat and the ILO Sub-Regional Office for the Caribbean. Mrs. Barrett holds a certificate in cybersecurity risk management, a postgraduate diploma in international arbitration, and a master in business administration, and an LB certification in legal frameworks for ICTs. Mrs. Barrett's expertise covers electronic commerce, internet governance, cybersecurity, and more recently, she has led to the development of the national cybersecurity strategies for the Bahamas, Costa Rica, Dominica, Jamaica, Suriname, Dominican Republic, and has helped Colombia, Mexico, and Peru in developing their national cybersecurity frameworks. Good morning and welcome, Kerry-Ann. Please proceed to give us your take on this topic and how we should be looking at going forward with this discussion. Kerry?
Thanks so much, George, and hello everyone, and happy Data Privacy Day. I think it's important to kind of bring attention to that since we're doing the topic of cyber and data privacy is so closely related. I have 5 minutes. I'll try and give you, I told George I'll try and focus on what's happening in the Caribbean at large, give you a more regional perspective because we have very, very good speakers who will give you more specifics on some of the topics that we want to cover in cyber. So one of the resources I wanted to share with everyone on the call is a 2020 report that we published recently with the IDB that covers cybersecurity, risk, progress, and the way forward in Latin America and the Caribbean. And in that study, one of the things that we picked up in the region at large with cyber is that many of us have actually improved our cybersecurity, believe it or not. It may not seem as impactful as we would want it to be, but we at the regional level kind of count some of the small progresses that our governments have made. For example, many have actually implemented national cybersecurity strategies. Some have improved their legal frameworks, and many of them have thought about actually personal data protection. Another thing that has happened in the region that we saw, though, is that more than 3/4 of the countries that we have in the region don't think about critical infrastructure protection. And for those on the call who may not know, those are the assets of the country that, God forbid, something happens to them, the country will be pretty much vulnerable and at risk. Another thing that we kind of noticed in that report, which I wanted to bring to this panel, is we've had a significant growth in countries thinking about cybersecurity and centralizing it into an entity. So many of them have actually established incident response teams. And that's actually a good thing as well. Trinidad and Tobago has a very good one, and we have someone from that right here. And Trinidad and Tobago has been working closely with the OAS on that and building their capacity. However, as George rightfully said, that with COVID, everyone was thrown online. And cybersecurity, while it was in the back burner for many of us, it's now come to light that digital assets, crisis management is something that we have to think about tangibly. In terms of statistics, I wanted to share some with you that we had. In particular, between November and December in 2020, we did notice that in the Caribbean region in particular, we had an increase and spike in spam, fraudulent spam, targeting accounts throughout the Caribbean. Many of them were trying to make fraudulent activities because we now have, believe it or not, an increase in Bitcoins in the region. There's been an increase of like almost 31,000 USD worth of Bitcoins that kind of flooded into the market in our region. So many of the spam emails that we've detected have the title Bitcoin Money Review. Can you make $1,500 daily with this method? So they've been just targeting many of our citizens with that. And it just shows us that as much as we think the Caribbean is like a small speck in the grand scheme of things, we're not exempt from the dynamism and the ease in which persons are actually targeting our citizens. Many of them are getting social or economic events that happen in seconds. So they're using the pandemic to make malicious activities. The pandemic has become the way in for many of our citizens who are panicked about it, thinking about vaccines, clicking on any email that they see about vaccines because everyone is so wanting this pandemic to be over. And social engineering is not something new to cybersecurity, but it has now gotten a wider platform with a global pandemic. What we do want to stress that's positive, though, is that although many of our countries have suffered like large losses because of the pandemic in our tourism sector, services, or SMEs, or commodity exports, we know that the impact is going to go beyond 2020 as we try to recover from this. It's going to be a long road back. But what it also helps is that a lot of our governments have now started to think about cyber. We have countries such as Barbados now developing their strategy. Guyana is developing their strategy. Jamaica is reviewing theirs. So there is an increase in awareness of the need to have this on the front burner, not on the back burner. It wasn't just the Caribbean, it was Latin America as well also suffered. We had a couple of instances of something called COVID lock that was gone through most of some of the Latin American countries, where in a matter of seconds, it was targeting individuals and companies. And because persons actually feared the pandemic, when persons clicked on the link, there was a lot of hijacking that happened. A lot of ransomware came out of that COVID lock campaign that they did. Another quick thing, because I only have a few minutes, that I wanted to kind of stress as well is we're a small region, and because of that, many of our parents, grandparents, guardians are in charge of our children. And with this thrust online and everyone going online, a lot of the parents still are not familiar with technology. And they still kind of fear it, and their way of addressing technology is to take it away from the kids. And no, you can't get your phone. No, you can't get your iPad. No, you can't go online. So one of the things I want to leave with us before we go into discussion is I want to implore us to kind of think about the fact that we are now online. There's no going back from this. Our kids are now exposed to it. There's no locking them back in a box and telling them just to watch the TV. So I want to encourage you to discuss internet safety and develop an online safety plan with your kids. For me, when I had to give my 6-year-old a laptop for the first time, it freaked me out because I didn't intend for him to be online until he was like 8. That was my grand plan. And I actually made him sign a contract with me. I wrote a contract and I said, if anything suspicious happen online, what do you do? Tell mom. And he had to sign beside that line. So just actually, you don't have to be, you've now become a CISO as a parent, as a guardian, as a grandmother. You're now the chief information security officer for your house. And as that person, you may not have the technology, but I want you to encourage you just to review some of the apps that your kids are looking at. I check my YouTube things that my kids watch all the time just to see what they're listening to. Simple rules: don't watch adults. Any adult that says anything inappropriate, mommy wouldn't say to you, just tell mommy, click it off. And the last thing I wanted to just share with you before I go is just remember that your kids are suffering a lot of anxieties right now as well. And online sometimes is their only outlet. Those who can't go to school and play with their kids who are still doing virtual, wherever you are in the Caribbean, some of them are still only doing virtual school. So think about the anxieties your kids are doing, and this is the human side to cyber, and recognize that if you educate your kids appropriately, you'll have a better relationship with them virtually as well. So I'll stop there, just allow the other panelists, and go ahead.
Good, thank you, Kerry. It's very you brought up some very good important one, very good and important point, especially around use of children using our technology and using it effectively and productively and securely. I'm sure we've all seen the recent TikTok issues that have arisen where kids are trying all kinds of crazy things because they're being badgered or bullied to do things like that. So it's a very important thing that I hope we're able to drill down more into as we get into the panel discussions. Please feel free to add your questions into our chat, and we'll try to have them all answered by the end of the session. I do have the assistance of another TTMAG director, Mr. Dev Tilak Singh, who will assist me in getting those questions responded to. Our next speaker is Mr. Anish Bachu. Anish is an ICT security analyst Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, and Anish is one of the person that Kerry-Ann just was talking about as somebody who's already been doing this and representing Trinidad and Tobago. Anish is an experienced cybersecurity professional attached to the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team under the Ministry of National Security. His duties vary from incident response, vulnerability, threat monitoring to cybersecurity assessments of governments, systems, and infrastructure. Anish graduated from St. John's University in New York with his BSc in Cybersecurity Systems and Master of Business Administration. He's also a member of the Cybersecurity Industry Advisory Board at St. John's and for the BSc and MSc programs. I'm very proud, I'm very pleased to invite Anish to come and say a few words, his overview on the topic and where he would like to point the discussion to. Anish?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So, as George mentioned, I'm Anish Bachu with the Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. And really what I wanted to bring to the forefront today and look at is that COVID really changed how we do business. And almost overnight, it has changed the risk profile, the cyber risk profile of most organizations, right, big or small. And we've been thrust into an area of remote working and having to put systems in place, again, almost overnight to be able to facilitate teleworking and working from home. And with that brings a whole bunch of new systems and software that wouldn't typically be part of your typical IT suite, you know? So in areas where you need to now set up VPN systems for secure access, some people don't set up VPNs, they put remote desktop straight to the internet. You know, they use various applications, TeamViewer, AnyDesk, and so forth. Really what I wanted to cover today is that we in Trinidad tend to think that Trinidad and Tobago is too small for hackers or threat actors to pay any attention to us. But that's not the case. It's actually very different. How these people make their money, how threat actors make their money is by compromising systems at mass, stealing data at mass, right? And it's very easy to get roped into one of these big mass campaigns. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna go through a couple of the instances that we've seen over the course of 2020 to bring it home as to why organizations need to take cybersecurity important, big organizations, small ones, anything in between, government and private sector. So one of the most prominent things we saw over the entire year of 2020 was attacks against firewall and VPN devices. And it's something that we tracked very closely here at the National CST. So much so that we actually had to alert multiple entities in Trinidad and Tobago about the fact that their firewall, their VPN appliance was actually compromised. So just to give some statistics on that, from January 2020 to December 2020, there were 37 unique devices. I wouldn't call vendors, I wouldn't call any persons, but there were actually 33 different organizations with vulnerable VPN and firewall devices, right? Mainly because they were outdated, they weren't kept up to the latest software upgrades. Some of them were because of security misconfiguration. So these are all things that we need to be on to secure our network. And an interesting fact, out of those 37 devices that were compromised, 28 of them, the credentials for 28 of them, the user credentials for 28 of them ended up on the dark web on various forums. You know, so those 28 organizations, or actually all 37 of them, had to really undergo really intensive security audits and to go back now to see if anyone actually made it into the network and what did they do if they made it in. Okay. Another big thing that we saw and that Kerry-Ann mentioned earlier was the instance of spam. We got a lot, we've gotten reports of a lot of extortion-based spam emails, as well as a lot of Bitcoin-based spam emails. And, you know, they're basically trying to trick users, whether private users or users as a part of a company, to send out money, scare them into sending out money. One extortion campaign that we got quite a few reports on was the instance where the attacker claimed to have compromising pictures of the victims, you know, through hacking their webcam and so forth. You know, so these are all events that happen on a daily basis, and we at the CSIRT try to track, mitigate, and respond to most of these instances, particularly for government and government entities when it happens within them. So it's very important to take the necessary actions to protect ourselves, because it's something that happens. Trinidad is not too small for anybody to want to attack, because like I say, information these days is power, and information these days is money, right? So, I mean, just a couple things to leave you with before I turn over to the next panelist is that, one, pay very close attention to your security. Don't leave it as just an IT responsibility. Cybersecurity is now a board responsibility. There have been cases in the US where board members have been held accountable. CEOs have been held accountable for cybersecurity breaches, right? So this is a board issue now. This is not, you can't just relegate it over to the IT department and you know, say they will handle it. This is a company-wide issue. And just a parting word before I hand over. We send out security advisories here from the National CSIRT. If you'd like to be a part of our security advisories, go to our website, ttcsirt.gov.tt. And if you scroll all the way down, there'll be an area to subscribe, and you'll get security alerts from us and security advisories. George, I'd like to hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Anish. And it's you again brought up some very useful topics that we all need to be thinking about. One of the things that I have learned, and you know, even coming from my own, bringing my own experience to the table, we've seen such an increase in things like ransomware attacks on our businesses, and Bitcoin has become a word in our dictionary. And if you ask any IT person or any internal audit person whether the disaster recovery plans for the company or organizations are up to date, does it have a specific chapter or portion of it that's dedicated to cyber attacks? Typically, the response that I get is, yeah, we're thinking about it, but it's not really physically there. We will treat it as we go. And if I'd want you guys to take one thing away from this panel today is, please ensure that your disaster recovery plans, which you spend a lot of time putting together, it's properly updated with the challenges of the day, which mainly are going to be cyber attacks. I'd like to welcome our next panelist, who is Nicolas Antoniello. Nicolas is the Regional Technical Engagement Manager for ICANN. As a Technical Engagement Manager for the LAC region, or Latin American Caribbean region, Nicolas joined ICANN in March 2020. He's based in the Montevideo office in Uruguay. Nicolas is an engineer and graduated from a university in Uruguay. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of the university, Nicolas, perhaps you will tell us that. In the field of telecommunications, electronics, and power systems. He also studied engineering in Madrid, Spain, Internet Governance at Diplo Foundation, SSIG, and USTII, among others. For the last 5 years prior to joining ICANN, he was appointed as a senior advisor for the Uruguayan government's minister in charge of national telecommunications policy. During his appointment to this ministry, he has represented Uruguay at many regional and international organizations and treaties. In the past years, he has been working for the national telecommunications company Antel in different positions. He has been a university professor for over 14 years. He has also been working very closely with the Internet technical community. He's been a chair of LACNIC's Public Policy Forum for over 6 years, technical instructor at the LACNIC events for many years, as well as participating as an instructor in many other courses at the regional level. He participated from the community in the development of the DNSSEC root signing protocol and has been working as a TCR or a trusted community representative for the DNSSEC root signing process and key maintaining protocol. He's also a founding member of LACNOG, or the Latin American and Caribbean Network Operations Group. Welcome, Nicolas, this morning all the way from Uruguay, and thank you so very much for accepting our invitation and bringing your representation to this panel. Nicolas, all yours.
Hi, thanks very much, George, and good morning, everybody. I would like to invest these 5 minutes in some highlights or some comments. The objective of these comments is just to to kind of provoke some reflections, discussion, exchange of ideas, and maybe some questions that hopefully we can enjoy. Not, I don't know if completely answer, but at least to address some concerns of this important topic. First, I'd like to talk a little bit on the threats involving the DNS, specifically not the ones that are against the domain name system itself, but the ones that use the domain name system as a means to perform some kind of attack or cybercrime. As you may know, the most common types of cybercrime involve either what is called phishing, which is the fraudulent practice of kind of sending emails pretending to be from reputable companies in order to induce us, the users, the individuals, to reveal some of our personal information, like passwords, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, etc. So that's the phishing, and that kind of always starts with an email, as Kerry was referring to at the beginning, and Anish also referred to a lot of these attack means or attack vectors. Then there is the malware. The malware is the software. It's basically software that is specifically designed to disrupt or damage or either gain access to some at some level to an authorized. It's unauthorized access, of course, to a computer system. Like this involve the so-called ransomware, keyloggers, rootkits, viruses, all the cyber stuff that you already know. And then there are the botnets. The botnets are a network of private computers, let's say, that are infected with malicious software and controlled as a group without the owner, without our knowledge. This is like accessing our computers without our knowledge and making our devices work in joint to perform an attack or a cybercrime to a third person. So threats make use of the fact that everyone uses the domain name system. We all use the domain name system to translate from the domain names, which is a friendly way of referring to websites and almost any device accessible, publicly accessible device on the internet. The DNS translate those names to IP addresses, basically. So we all use it, and these threats make use of that fact, to perform some cybercrime or some threat. Those threats involve, for example, if you disrupt the DNS, then you disrupt merchant transactions, government services, social networks, etc. You almost disrupt the whole internet if you gain access to a certain level to the domain name system. If you exploit the DNS, you can trick, defraud, or deceive users. Most common vectors of exploiting, include malicious registering domain names, hijacking name resolutions or registration services, corrupting DNS data, etc. And some of the most common attacks that make use of the DNS system are what is called disrupted reflection and amplification. That is normally to spoof the source IP address of a user, for example, or of a website, server, or whatever. You want to, to make a denial of service and throw that device a lot of traffic as much as possible, so that that device can manage that traffic and stop providing the service that is meant to provide. Then another kind of attack is what we call resource depletion. The resource depletion is more or less the same, is to to consume or try to consume all the resources of some service device and make that device stop working. Cache, what we call cache poisoning, which is to kind of at the resolver, at the DNS resolver level, they change the registry. They make it they make a DNS resolver answer the user with a wrong IP for a certain domain name. For example, I want to go to my bank account. I type www.mybank.com, for example, and the DNS system will solve that translation and give it an answer to me. And the answer, if the cache poisoning was performed, was successful, what the answer I'm gonna get, the IP address I'm gonna get for my bank won't be the correct address. It will be a fake address with a site that appears exactly the same as the original one, and I will be giving the password and my username for my bank account to an attacker. Then another kind of attack is changing the user the resolvers that what we use, that involves normally using some kind of malware to infect my computer and change the way my computer behaves and point when I went to a certain web page, for example, it will route to a fake web page again to get some information, data, or whatever the attacker wants to be able to do. Using the DNS as a covert exfiltration channel, there are techniques that make use of the DNS traffic to embed data and to be able to extract that data from a certain user computer or organization computer. Why they do that? Why they hide the data in the DNS traffic? Because that way they can bypass the firewalls and all the security measures. If they are successful in hiding the data, when the computer sends a DNS query, inside the query, it goes my data. So that is another kind of attack. Another kind of attack is to use, that is more or less the same, but the other way, from the one that I just explained, it is to use the DNS as a covert malware channel. That is to command, I install a malware into a computer and use the DNS answers, in this case, to hide commands and to send commands to the malware to be able to, for the malware to attack a third party or whatever. Exploiting IDNs, which is internationalized domain names, can be exploited in a way that point users to attackers' sites, exploiting all IoT and in general any domestic or device infrastructure. So from user location perspective, there are mainly two scenarios here. I think the enterprise one and the domestic one. And I think the main problem, I don't know if problem is not probably the best word because it's not a problem per se, but it can lead to issues and problems. One of the main problems is that from a cybersecurity point of view is that the so-called new normal, has exchanged the former, I mean, the working from the office to working from home. So what can we do with that, or what can we do to better or to be kind of the more protected we can? I think the first thing to do is educate. I think the second thing to do is to educate, and the third thing to do, guess what, is educate also. So we have to educate people. We have to educate ourselves. We have to take take extra care while using our domestic infrastructure, because we are not under the protection of our IT team, which protects our company. In our house, we are the IT team, so we have to protect our infrastructure, or at least we have to learn and be educated to learn what are the threats that we are exposed to and try to mitigate them. Provide tools to organizations and to users to be more and more aware of what's happening inside and outside their networks. Of course, this will raise some privacy versus security considerations, maybe. Taking care of authorizations, registrations, password management, how we manage our passwords, how we do authentication. Do we use two-factor authentication as much as possible? Please try not to use the SMS as a means to send the two-factor authentication. And I have, if I use software in a regular basis, I have to have it, updated. So patch your software, update your software, because normally the companies that produce software try to update it so as to, mitigate all the threats and all the stuff. So in summary, what I try to say is, I think we have to be proactive instead of reactive. We don't have to run away when some issue arises, but to take care of it in an informed and responsible way. I mean, we will still use internet more and more and more. And after this pandemic, the so-called new normal involves using more and more internet every day, as Kerry also mentions. So that are my reflections, and I hope that inspire you to give some reflections, some comments, some questions. Back to you, George.
Good, thank you, Nicolas, and really a good technical overview on the things that we need to be aware of and how we progress. I loved the 3 points that you brought up about the way to solve this problem is really 1, education, 2, education, and 3, education. I think that says it in a nutshell of how we need to go forward. Our final presenter on the panel today is Dr. Rajendra Singh. He's a system engineer from network security at UE St. Augustine. Dr. Singh, or Raj as we'll call him for this session, holds a PhD in computer science. For the past 16 years to current date, he has defined and held the lead role for network security at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. He has a very broad set of training and experience in cybersecurity, holding as well several globally recognized technical and leadership cybersecurity certifications. Raj has implemented a wide range of innovative solutions for the university, mostly with minimal or very little resources assigned. The latest one leveraging a vendor's VPN feature to achieve a zero-cost two-factor deployment with self-password resets for close to 2,700 staff working under the new normal at the University of the West Indies. Raj, welcome. Thank you very much for participating, and handing over to you now.
Hi, thank you, George. Good morning, everyone. So, by being last year, you more or less heard the full gambit of cybersecurity that could be discussed in a forum like this. I have an article here which kind of summarizes where the new normal is. This article basically said that 95% of organizations have responded to the survey saying that the first thing that they have to do is change their cybersecurity strategy. Right? The biggest problem they have is enabling remote work at large scale. And as Nicolas mentioned, education, right, for your employees. Network security and threat prevention, those needs to be improved, and it's probably rated at like number 4. Endpoint and mobile security probably go hand in hand with the remote work, because it's either you deploy these endpoints and mobile devices which your organization would normally hand over to the employee, or you do bring your own device. In those cases, Kerry-Ann started off and said, welcome and happy Data Privacy Day. So one of our challenges when you bring your own device, and even providing a device for that employee, how do you protect that person's personal information when it is at home? Let's say they're using their own device. How do you, a lot of employees do not want to use their own device because they think that you are going to be able to retrieve some of their personal information. And similarly, if you give them a device to take at home, that device is connected to their network, right? So how do you protect that privacy? It's always a challenge for us. We tend to go with some sort of client to manage that endpoint. And it remains one of our biggest challenges at the university when we ask you to bring your own device, or if we give you a device, and some people even challenge the two-factor authentication using an app. Why should I use my personal phone, right? So that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's a recurring problem that we're having. If I go down the list here, rapid adoption of cloud technology is one of these strategies that we forced into at the university. One of the very first things that we did when this pandemic started and you had lockdown was to move our e-learning platform to the cloud. Most of our services are in our data center. We had to consider the volume of students, close to 20,000 students accessing these services online. So that was what we call a rapid deployment to the cloud. Luckily, we were able to outsource that and do some backend connectivity for the authentication and so on. Right? The last one probably is the unplanned reinvention to cybersecurity business models. So this is ongoing. Right? We have to keep relooking at the cybersecurity model. In our case, we don't even have a cybersecurity team. Right? We for the past 16 years, it is noted that I have led that area for the campus, but I have no staff. And this is a challenge that I have no permanently assigned staff. This is a challenge in many organizations. They don't have budget and they don't have resource for the normal IT operations, much less for cybersecurity. But with this new normal, I think it has brought to the forefront. It is absolutely necessary for us to budget and put resource in this area, otherwise we're going to flop. The earlier panelists spoke about the digital transformation taking place. As part of that digital transformation, ensure you have a budget and a structure, a governance structure that will include cybersecurity, right? So overall, what we need to do as well, being from academia, I would say we need to build capacity. At the University of West Indies, we have no degree program that is focused strictly on cybersecurity. So a lot of the businesses that need to build that capacity usually have their employees doing certification courses or foreign courses. We need to build that capacity locally and in the Caribbean. I've had some association with the CSIRT, Trinidad and Tobago CSIRT, and some of the training that the OS had done that Kerry-Ann spoke about. It was a 2-week intensive training program in the University of Leon in Spain. And that, when you go there and you look at NCB, that is the local CSIRT in Spain, and you see how they are set up, we ask ourselves, why can't we reach that point? Not just with the CSIRT, but since 2012, and as Maria said in the last panel discussion, we're waiting years and years and years to establish some of these legislation. By the time you establish it, it's outdated. So where is the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Agency that That bill went to Parliament, or the paper came from an interministerial committee since 2012. It went to Parliament and lapsed. We need to actually step up in those areas so that we could have this joint collaboration and this capacity building. We shouldn't just rely, for example, on the national CSIRT. We should have a hierarchical set of CSIRTs within business groups, within academia, within banking industry, because there are different focus in these areas. And that feeds into the CSIRT and back down. So overall, I just mentioned a few of these things categorized. Where is the new normal? To see the discussion, which my colleagues Kerry-Ann, Anish, and Nicolas already went into some detail into. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raj, for bringing that experience with academia. And I want to stress again that the purpose of putting this panel together with this level of expertise was to really give you that type of insight into all of the fields that we should all be concerned about: academia, private sector, public sector, and personal usage of computers. You know, when I was growing up many years ago, I heard this metric being talked about back then, that 50% of computer users have been hacked, and the other 50% still don't know that they have been hacked. So I want to take this off with a question to back to Kerry, which she started a discussion on it. Kerry, you know, how much of a threat is cybersecurity in our region and globally? I know you started talking about cybersecurity in our region, but we are such global players now in terms of vendors that we deal with, other countries that we have relationships with. How much of a threat is cybersecurity in our region and globally? Kerry?
I think you could probably take it from, even as much as we don't talk about some of the CARICOM approaches as we should. If you think about the fact that all the way back in I would say probably 2014, 2013, CARICOM heads of government had actually tiered cybercrime as like a tier 1 threat. It's actually been on our agenda for years now. It's not something that hasn't been considered a tier 1 threat. And it's a lot of it is as a result of, as you said, it's lack of knowledge. It's not recognizing that once you're connected to the internet, you're vulnerable. It's not a matter if, it's when. And one of the things that we promote, it's not a matter of being fearful. It's like knowing that if you drive on the street, you could have an accident. But it doesn't mean that you stop driving. It just means that you do the precautions. You put on your seatbelt just in case of an accident. You make sure that you keep your eyes on the road. You use your indicators. So I think thinking about cybersecurity through those lenses, it's not a matter of cybersecurity being a threat, but it's more how can we put best practices in place so that if something happens, the impact is mitigated as best as possible. I think that's the perspective I'd want to throw instead.
Okay, good. Heading a little more into some of the areas of technical background, and maybe Anish, you could give us a feel for this. When I look at the Gartner statistics on where people are being cyber attacked and what their metrics are, Gartner says that RDP compromise is about 57% of the cyber attacks that happen. Email phishing, various forms of email phishing, about 26% comes from that, and other malware, viruses and stuff like that, 16%. So it seems that phishing, RDP compromise, and timed releases of malware seems to be the highest or the most profitable, most consistent, most found. How would you recommend to our audience how they handle these three things: phishing, RDP compromise, time releases of malware? Anish?
So just to give some statistics about those instances before I answer the question. As of this morning, I checked the record this morning, and as of this morning, there are 202 exposed RDP systems in the Trinidad and Tobago IP space, right? That's 202 different machines with a direct line of communication from the outside that attackers can potentially take advantage of, right? So there was actually an increase in that from the beginning right before COVID into now of about 17% in the number of open RDPs that we've seen in Trinidad and Tobago space. Now, in the case of protecting in this sense, right, is that the general rule of thumb is that unless absolutely necessary and that there's no other physical way possible, remote desktop protocol shouldn't be exposed directly to the internet. You access it through a VPN, so you have the persons who would need access to the server or the device. We would have them securely VPN into the network first, and then they could move from there into RDP and into remote desktop and into wherever device they need to get into. In the context of phishing, right, it's really centered around user education, right, cybersecurity awareness. Because no matter how many spam filters and security measures that we do, there's still many instances where phishing emails get through. So really you're relying on your staff at that point, you're relying on your workers, you're relying on the people of your organization to identify what a phishing email is, and in order to do that, they need training to do so, right? And George, what was the last point?
It was time releases of malware, where malware is getting into your system, but it doesn't become activated until 3 months, 6 months later. So all the things that are coming to your system don't get activated for a while. And people who have been getting away from cyber attacks because they feel that they have backups. But what happens is that the malware is affecting the backup. So you can go back 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and still have your backups being affected with malware. The most recent example of this is something that we've seen called the snake ransomware that actually goes back 1 year before it gets activated. So you may think that you're safe, but your backups are not.
So in instances like that, and we have seen a handful of cases here in Trinidad where the backups were also infected. You know, you get a ransomware attack, or you get some sort of attack on the front end, and you go to restore your data, and your backup data is also compromised to an extent, right? So in instances like this, it really goes towards how do you back up your data, right? Backing it up and leaving it just so is not, you need to monitor what you back up. You need to do your antivirus checks on your backups, right? You know, and you also need to make sure that they work, right? Ever so often, right? You need to make sure that your backups, when you do go for them, right? In the unfortunate circumstance where you have to go for it, right? You know, there was one instance where they put the backup in and the backup was corrupted, right? So we need to look at identifying these things on the network, well, in the backups first, after, and from a network perspective or from a host-based perspective, right? Make sure you have up-to-date antivirus. Make sure you have up-to-date network security systems. In that, when these malware do get activated later down the line, whether it's a month, a week, you know, 2-3 years down the line, you have your up-to-date system that would be able to identify, track, and mitigate it on the spot, and then somebody there who's dedicated to respond.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot. You know, as the world moves away, we've had lots of attacks on the RDP space, and we've had everybody recommends, hey, you should be using VPN and using RDP for internal logons and all kinds of stuff. And the new topic seems to be around identity management. The weakest link in any security chain is the end user. We all know that. They're the people who will click a link, although you can paint it on their foreheads. Do not click that link if it looks suspicious. Do not open attachment. So we're all familiar about how do we get that. But where do you guys think that we should be going next in terms of how do we identify correctly, either through single sign-on, through multi-factor authentication protocols? Where is the world heading? Because, you know, it's much, from my point of view, it's much easier for a hacker to go after your password and your credentials into a system rather than trying to hack your network firewall appliance or because they are putting in so much security now. And remember, as I said, this is a $20 billion industry. The hackers are want maximum gain for least effort. So they are going to issue a million emails a day, and if they get 2 or 3% responses and compromise your passwords, that's a good payback for them. I was reading an issue on your password and your internet and your email address sells for about $15 on the dark web. Don't ask me how I got that information, please. So, Nicolas, Raj, can you talk to us a bit about identity management and where we need to go as organizations, as people? How do we manage this whole identification process and raise the level of security awareness? Nicolas or Raj, any one of you guys?
Raj, if you want,
Sure.
I mean, I can jump in and then Raj interrupt me. Anish or Raj interrupt me. Whatever you want to make comments or I think that things have changed, not a lot, but significantly when we, mainly not because of the I mean, of course, because of the pandemic, but from a cybersecurity perspective, they have changed in the way we deal with everyday work and with our everyday social development. What I mean with this is that we still access a lot of sites and places using the internet that need for identity. There are many resources that we access that doesn't need for or don't need for us to authenticate. So my first reflection will be, or advice will be, okay, only use authentication when you need it, when you really need it. I mean, don't provide your information for when it's not needed, because that's high. That will make more risky your activity. Then, in the cases that you need to provide authentication and on personal information or whatever, for example, accessing bank accounts that we do it in a daily basis to pay for our expenses and a lot of stuff, we are moving from buying in person to buying online, like massively moving to online, buying and exchanging of goods. And of course, you will need to authenticate yourself and you need some kind of identity. So in those cases, it's kind of difficult to tell or to mention a secret receipt to avoid being the target of a threat. But what I should say is that you are the ones, we are the ones that know which is normal and which is not normal. I think we have to educate ourselves. We have to read, but we have to take, to bring the attention that we have to educate our children also, because now they are more and more using the internet and using some in a way they didn't use it before. I mean, it's massively, and they don't know about what is phishing, what is and they are authenticating when accessing their school resources. They are authenticating when watching, streaming cartoons or whatever they watch on streaming services, and they need to know what is normal and what is not normal, and they need to know what to do in case they find something that looks like no normal. So that would be my first recommendation, to try to educate yourself and your family about this new way of living, let's say. And the other thing is that, again, as I mentioned before, you have to take care of your own infrastructure. You have to update your systems, your applications. You have to use strong password. Don't use root/root or password bar /password123. And if they ask me to change the password once a month, don't use password 1, password 2, password 3. Use something more complicated. Maybe use some password admin app. There are a lot of apps to admin passwords, so you can generate a quite strong and strange password and store it there. So you have to don't remember, because passwords that we have to remember are always easy passwords because we can't remember complicated stuff. So if I generate a random number or character string, I have to store it somewhere or write it down. You can even write it down, you know, in a place that not behind your screen, you know, not in your background, just on your desk when nobody can see it but you. So you do this, okay, you type it, that's okay.
Yeah, Nicolas. So
yeah.
I want to just interject. You said that I can, so thank you. So in terms of the passwords, what I want to ask is how many of our listeners, viewers, use two-factor authentication on their Gmail account, right? Do you know you have that facility? And this is where we have a lot of challenges. The average non-tech user do not go through the process to set up a two-factor, unless, of course, they get prompted over and over and over by those, let's say the Gmail emails that will say, strengthen your security by setting up this two-factor, and then they will go through the process. But it has been shown mathematically that a complex password is not as good as a long password. We will have auditors will come into our organization, they will go through the usual scripts, and it will have a checklist. Do you use complex password? Do you have expiry of 90 days or so on? And those things, it is in the NIST standards that are not necessarily recommended that you do that. Where you should head is with a proper two-factor. And once you do that, if I get your password, I know your username, I get your password, that second factor, which if it's actually personally on you, it's more difficult for that attacker to get to actually complete the authentication process. And we do have some banks in Trinidad where you have, for example, a matrix card. That is a two-factor. You have it on you, but with the type of cameras I pointed out to someone before, you hold that in your hand, a camera, I could pick that up, what the 100x zoom cameras now. Those bank customers, what some of them are experiencing is they have to secure that particular card from their families as well. And that's where your threat is sometimes when it comes to finance, managing your personal finance. We have better two-factor than that. That is across the app-based rolling code, which some of the other banks are employing. So as an organization, when you choose your two-factor, you have different strengths that you could look at, different levels. Now, I'm not hitting the bank that has the matrix card because you can supplement that with additional things, which they do, by the way. So you have email alerts that follow through when the login occurs, right? So you have to balance that, the cost and implementing it. So the question was, you have free two-factor for your Gmail, do you use it? and why don't you use it? The challenge is always that human factor to set it up, to get it set up. We experienced at the university purchasing a two-factor solution for our VPN. It was, in the early days, it was costly. It actually had an annual fee attached. Then I think that was like about 5-6 years ago. Then we moved to another solution that's just a one-time fee. Yet it's too much when you're talking about 2,700 staff to give a two-factor solution that's costing each token about, I think, 300 TT, right? So we had to innovate. When this pandemic started, we actually had just under 200 of those two-factor tokens rolled out. And we hurriedly went to the vendor and asked, what is the cost? Can we get 200 more? But one of the other things that we realized, well, this vendor was running an education program, and I happened to jump in on it. And I discovered that they had a free two-factor, or in a sense, it existed. It was the email two-factor. So within a few days, we actually was able to implement the email two-factor. And basically, we split our VPN into the 3 technologies to balance the load. We had what you call the IPsec VPN with the strong 2-factor, which was based on the app and the rolling code. Then we had what we call the SSL VPN, and the reason we went with this IPsec and then the SSL, again, we reached that roadblock where you had to educate the users how to set up the client. The IPsec client more difficult to set up than the SSL client. The SSL client was a simpler configuration. We actually branded it, our browser branded it VPN Lite. It took like less than a minute to set that up, and we tagged on the email 2-factor on that. Once we do something like that, now you split it out, right, into the category of users. So you now have to reclassify your online users. You have to see what services they require, where they're located, what devices they're using, and reclassify it. As a matter of fact, there's a Gartner report. It's published 30th of June. The title is Designing Security for Remote Work-First Enterprises. And what that report is telling you is, yes, you do all these short gap things, right? But you have to look at the medium and the long-term solution. And the question, some of the questions they pose here, is VPN really the way to go? Right? Is that going to be your long-term solution? Or are you going to be looking more at cloud services? So identity is, if I come back to the question, your identity is tied in back. Sometimes you need these short gap solutions, but you have to look long-term. And what I've been seeing as well is that a lot of identity management is being built into applications. For example, Microsoft Office 365. How many of you have your 2-factor rolled out with Office 365? We had to struggle to get that rolled out. Again, we bounce the education aspect for the user, right? How do you communicate that and get the user to use it and even enforce it at times? We have 20,000 students. We have them on the 365 platform. It's not possible for us to turn on the 2-factor for them. So when you speak about phishing a while back, you can actually block or stop a lot of phishing that way, because when I say stop, yes, they get your password, but they cannot go further, right? So it is one of the most overlooked area, your 2-factor, your VPN, how to stop some of these threats, but also look at it long-term when you move to the cloud. Also think about Porter's 5 forces model. When you go and you start using some of these applications and you're paying for it and you get tied in for that, how easy it's for you to move to another solution? A lot of businesses get trapped like that a lot of times. And we constantly keep that on the forefront, the 5 forces model. Where is your bargaining power? That's what the 5 forces model tell you. Keep the bargaining power on your table as much as possible, right? It will.
Okay. Right. Thanks so much, Raj. For because we're coming down to the close of our time, I wanted to hold that point because I'm seeing some questions coming up on the chat that might be related for you to give some further explanations on that. I do absolutely agree that the multi-factor authentication, even something I've seen, even IT professionals, we try to insist that we do that in our companies, but we don't take it on personally. And a lot of us don't practice good multi-factor authentication processes for our own devices, our own personal email addresses. We don't. So because I want to get everybody a chance, I've seen lots of questions coming in. And thanks, Anish and Kerry-Ann, for posting links on the chat for things that you have been talking about, and very much appreciated. Devtilak Singh, do we have any hot issues that have come up on the chat that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Hi, everyone. My name is Devtilak Singh. Just confirming you all are hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there's been a lot of discussion in the chat with sharing of resources, cybersecurity resources, and so forth. But 2 questions have emerged. One is from Suzanne Andrews, and she asks, well, a lot of us are experiencing Carnival Tobago, and there are now several paid virtual events being advertised. So which body monitors and regulates online payment systems and online financial transactions in Trinidad and Tobago? In other words, if there's carnival-related fraud occurring, to which body does the public report? That's the first question. Shall I?
Okay. No, let's take that first question. I'm not sure, Anish or Kerry.
Yeah, so I'll take it first. So when you look at the security of these systems, they generally have, I believe there's some sort of accountability to the central bank when it comes to the security of financial transactions online. When it comes to the security of government online payment systems, the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, we handle those assessments here. When it comes to, let's say there is an incident or a breach of information or a breach of card data, we'll be looking at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Cybercrime Unit and the Fraud Squad in the TTPS.
Okay, good. Any one of my panelists has anything else to add on this particular question?
Yeah, I just think I would just add to it that a part of it also is to kind of be smart where the links are coming from. One of the things that Raj kind of alluded to in terms of the user, a part of the process is the user is kind of the critical factor. No matter how much firewalls you put and VPNs, your most vulnerable in is the end user at the end of the day. So even if you are purchasing something online or anything like that, one of the things I always do is to double check back onto the original website. I just always do some amount of investigation. It doesn't have to be anything technical, just users, just being a user, just kind of just double checking the links. What Raj spoke about, there is electronic transactions legislation in Trinidad that protects those electronic transactions, and they are accountable. So I think just doing some due diligence as well helps. Oftentimes I get links to process payment, and before I put my credit card information in, I kind of double check the link. I'm not technical, I'm a policy person, but I try to make sure the link is coming from the authenticated site itself. So that's also a good way to think about it, just from the practical side.
Good advice, Kerry.
A very nice way to actually check to see if your link is legitimate is try just Googling it. If you could find the link through Googling and going through the website, then you're pretty much in a better standpoint, than just clicking on the link of the email.
Also, George, one thing that I'm thinking of is one thing that could help is that maybe some of us, at least it's not something that I did in the past a lot, is to make us the habit of at least, I don't know, once a week, for example, to have a look at our expenses charged to our credit cards and our debit cards, because I use a lot of debit card every day, dozens or even more times a day, and small charges can be made, and a lot of money can be raised through stealing small charges. So it's a good thing or a good habit to take like half an hour once a week and have a look at my expenses and see if there's something that is not normal there, and just call the correct desk or bureau or office to raise my. Of course, the bank will be one of the first resources, but then there are from consumer protection bodies, etc. We can go and see. But if you don't know what's happening, you cannot take any action. So the first thing, I think, it's always to know what's going on and to know what I'm exposed to. No, because we also normally talk about cybersecurity and protecting the system. No, but the ultimate goal is to protect the people behind those systems, because I don't care if my phone crashes. I mean, it's going to be sad because I have to buy another one and it's expensive, but anyway, it's a phone. The problem is when the people it's impacted and how we are impacted by those threats. So we have to make sure we know what's going on for to be able to act after that.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's coming back to that point of personal responsibility for those kinds of actions. Deb, is there any other question waiting for us to respond?
Yes, thank you, George. This is Devanand. So we have a question from Karishma Raghunath Singh. How feasible would it be to make it mandatory that organizations be associated or at least employ a cyber response team?
The question is open to the panel.
Just from the practical standpoint, because I'm among technicians, so it's always hard for me to speak when I have all these smart people with me. I'm just a policy person, but think about it more not in terms of a cyber response team, but to make sure that you have a cybersecurity response role within your organization. We always give those practical things to our member states because I think people think of team and then it automatically start thinking about a large budget. And then once people start thinking about the budget, they get intimidated and then they just scrap the idea altogether. So what we always suggest is start small and think about, do I have someone who is my information security person? The role is assigned either to your IT person or you hire somebody for that. But think about the role to make sure that somebody's actually checking your network. Someone is actually responsible for coordinating your policies. All your users within your organizations know who to call if they have an incident. And then once you kind of build up that experience within your organization, you can then start to make a case to your CEO, your manager that, hey, this role is substantive, I need a budget line. And when you get the budget line, you may be able to hire a person. So kind of think small, because I saw in the chat persons talk about SMEs, and that's always the issue. We think big, and we always think this incident response team needs to have fancy screens on the wall. They need to have a million technologies, but all they really need is an open source ticket system. Someone can call them, report an incident. Someone is accountable to follow what the issue was and have some resolve. So think about it more practically. That's just my take on it. The technical people on here, which are the smarter people, can probably give you a better idea. But we always try to think about roles rather than just having a team, because that's usually intimidating.
I would just want to add with what to what Kerry-Ann just said. If you do want to go all the way and have a budget and to set up a CIT, incident response team, there is the RFC 2350, which is probably the easiest RFC you will find and can read in English to make sense. You could actually use that to guide you how to set up your CIT and to actually come up with an initial budget and probably have a plan and to scale it as time goes. So look for that RFC 2350.
But Raj, is that for SMEs or small and medium, they probably don't even understand what an RFC is, and they probably it's way beyond their capability of thinking.
One of the things I said, George, is that is the simplest RFC you can find, easy to read. It's in English. I think Anish would support me on that. Right?
It's one of the easier ones, definitely.
The problem is I'm selling fried chicken and chips. That's not my forte. It's not my strength. I'm dependent on a one person or 1.5 persons that I have in my employee that managing IT that has a million tasks to do at the end of the day. So I'm trying to get a feel for how do we elevate the importance of this subject for people whose core business is not IT and security. How do we get that message to them?
Sure. I think that to add to what Kerry-Ann said at the beginning, I would add to that we have I would say that we also have a cybersecurity role within our family now. I mean, this has changed again.
Yeah, agreed.
So we are our own cybersecurity team. In the past, we didn't care about cybersecurity. Maybe some of us care because it's part of our job, but not because on Sunday we will read about cybersecurity. Maybe I read a novel, but not about cybersecurity. So I would say take your time, or a little time at least, to know what is going on out there, to be able to act, because there's a common set there that says you don't have to. I mean, sometimes it's better not to know how to solve something, but to have the number of the one that knows how to solve it. But to call that one person, you have to know what's going on. So I should say, okay, I should call this. So be informed. You are your own. We are on our own at certain level now. But
Okay, good.
So just to add my take on it, particularly for smaller organizations, the CSUT is here if you need advice if you need direction, so feel free to reach out through our website or email, and we could more than help you. Dependent on resources, of course. We're still a government entity, so resources are strapped. But we'll do our best to guide you in the right direction, and how much ever collaboration is needed, we could work with it from there.
So actually, my point of view is that that's where the responsibility and the accountability should really exist, because the government at the end of the day is the one that should be challenged and should be the one that has the budget to understand the importance of having this access for its citizens. We can't obviously all set up CSIRTs in our organizations, but there should be that central governing body. Devana, do we have any more questions on the web that we need to respond to?
There's another question from Luke. Sorry, Devanand here speaking. The question is, when we consider the future of digitalization in the Caribbean, what are the expectations of the IT fraternity in terms of CARICOM involvement? Are they a key stakeholder as a group in making things move faster?
I'm going to kick that conversation off because as some of you know who have been had other conversations or attended our other seminars, we've been speaking about something called the Caribbean Data Protection Act for the Caribbean, really modeled against the GDPR. And we've been trying to bring this, the best way to bring this up with the CARICOM governments. And just like everything else, it depends on where they see as priorities of getting important legislation like this enough. And for those of you who want more information on that, please feel free to visit igf.tt to see the last discussion that we've had on this back in November, I think it was, where we had a major discussion on CDPR. But to be honest, we don't have the outlet to get it to the CARICOM, and more importantly, get that decision to be made at the highest level that this is important enough to make a decision on. I'll leave it open to anybody else who's on the panel to give their input on this.
I think that if you go back and look at the interministerial report to set up the Cybersecurity Agency for Trinidad and Tobago, one of the line items in that report speaks about when you set up your CSIRT, you're going to set it up in such a way that you're going to have collaboration lines with other CSIRTs, both locally, but more so regionally and internationally, because you're really on the internet, which is a global network. You cannot really protect yourself from incidents in isolation. You have to collaborate. And this is where I mentioned earlier in the discussion that the OS was involved in assisting with building that capacity with Trinidad and with academia, and building that network out regionally. They actually involve all the OS countries. So of course, you do that based on your own networking. I don't know if the question was more towards having a more formal CARICOM body for overseeing something like that. I know our Prime Minister sits on the CARICOM. He chairs, I think, the security committee there, cybersecurity committee. So it's something probably we need to take forward and see if one of these days we get the CSA, Trinidad and Tobago CSA set up soon. How do we have that collaboration, at least not just at the CSIRT, but the higher level, the government and higher levels at the national level in different areas of cybersecurity.
Okay, so I'll make a note that Raj has advertised that we send a WhatsApp to Dr. Rowley to make sure he gets this on his agenda. Somebody else had a comment?
Right. So when you look at cybersecurity at a CARICOM level, we do collaborate with some of the other CSIRTs in CARICOM. When it looks at policy, cybersecurity policy across CARICOM, that's handled usually by CARICOM Impacts. They have a cybersecurity group inside there that tries to coordinate at that level. in the case of our local CSIRT, how we get information to and from is actually through the OAS, through a network called CSIRT Americas, where we have a direct line to every CSIRT on this side of the hemisphere. So it's a very easy way for us to share information and receive information about threats and activity and the like.
Mm-hmm. Great.
George, also one comment on that is that there is also something that all governments may do, which is to for example, to publish or make it available to the public good practices. Not only to the domestic side, but to ISPs, for example, internet service providers and organizations. There are a lot of protocols that may be deployed that protect the users and the networks from different kind of threats or cyber attacks. That there's a lot yet to do in that field, and the one role of the government is to promote that, to invite all the organizations, all the internet service providers to deploy those protocols to be able to be more secure and protected.
Okay,
that's
great.
For a technical and a network perspective.
Good.
And just to wrap up that point, I think just to follow on from Nicolas and Anish's, one of the things we've been focused on at the OAS is capacity building. So for the rest of the year, we've been encouraging our CERTs to reach out to some of their constituents when we do have free open training, to at least not just members of the CERT, but other CERTs within the country that they work with to be part of the training, because a national network is only as strong as each of the network operators actually cooperate with each other. So having your ISPs as a part of the training, having your private sector, your public sector part of the training, so that when the CERT reaches out to them, it's not the CERT trying to build the capacity, but everyone is kind of on par with the knowledge that's needed for information sharing. So we even, just for everyone to know, we did something recently with the Pacific Alliance called MISP, which is one method of information sharing platforms. And we've been encouraging our member states to think about information sharing among the national CERT and other persons within the country to be able to share data, because it's not a matter of getting the data out in the region. If something is happening in Trinidad, more than likely it's probably happening up the pipeline in Jamaica. It's probably happening in Barbados. But because nobody's talking about it, everyone is being knocked off one by one, like a secret assassination happening that nobody's talking about. So if we start to share information, putting in the right protocols, because that's one of the things we actually developed for the Pacific Alliance, an information sharing protocol. So among the 4 countries in the alliance, they're able to use that protocol, common terminologies, common taxonomies for different incidents. So everyone says penetration is penetration. This kind of attack is an attack. So everyone is speaking the same language. If 5 pens mean that it's a serious incident, everyone hears it the same way and can share data. So it's something that we're thinking about for the Caribbean, and we're going to see how we can figure out to roll out that kind of training to make sure that Caribbean countries start to think about it the same way as well. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Excellent point, Kerry. Folks, we're pretty much near to what our end of time was. Dev, if you have any further questions, can we encourage our participants to probably send them, or we can follow up separately with specific things. But a lot of this comment and a lot of the presentations will be at the IGF.TT website. And if you have any further questions arising when you leave and you said, hey, I should have asked this question of this panel, please feel free to contact us at info@mag.tt. And I do encourage you to join the MAG so that you can be part of these discussions as we go forward. In the remaining time that we have left, I would like to have each panelist give a 1-minute overview on where you would really like to see this go next based on this discussion and all the points that have arisen in 1 minute or less. So I'll throw something at you if you take more than a minute. So Kerry, why don't we start with you?
I think I just want to encourage everyone on the call to think about cybersecurity not as an intimidating undertaking. Cyber hygiene is what we promote, and thinking about how you brush your teeth, comb your hair. Internet is now our new life. It's not something that is a distant future where we think it's something out of our reach. All our kids are online. We are online every day. Some of us are stuck at home online. So that's the only interaction. So I think I just wanted to leave with everyone to think of cybersecurity as a hygiene matter. Do your due diligence, update your machines, do your password changes, all the tips we've tried to give you here. Just try to employ it. I shared in the link Stop Think Connect website, because it's a very neutral platform that gives tips for every business, citizen, everyday person. So just wanted to leave with that.
Great. Anish?
Right. So what I want to leave you guys with is, to change how you think about cybersecurity a little bit. It's not an IT. It's not just an IT responsibility. It's everyone in the organization has a part to play, and all you need to do, they're simple steps, to get yourself to improve your cybersecurity posture, right? As Kerry-Ann mentioned, keep your stuff up to date, know your assets, know what you're protecting, know the information you need to be protecting, because not everything on your network needs to be protected to a Fort Knox level, So identify where you need to protect and prioritize. That's the best way you could use your resources, and contact the C-suite if you need advice, you need guidance. Reach out to us. We are here. You could reach out to us through our website, or our primary email address is contacts@ttcsirt.gov.tt.
Great. Thank you so much, Anish. Nicolas?
Thanks, George. I think Kerry-Ann and Anish did a great summary of what the future and recommendations would look like. But what I may add to what they've said is that it's more or less the summary of what they say is that cybersecurity is part of our lives now, more than in the past, because great part of our social interactions and our life turned to almost fully online for a year now, and probably it's gonna take another year or so to go back to some degree of what we had before in terms of personal, face-to-face interaction. So this is part of our lives now, and we must act in consequence for that. And to add more, I want to tell you that we in ICANN we have one of our goals is to provide capacity building on all ICANN related topics, and we have a curricula. We have a lot of capacity building proposals to provide. We can also coordinate with Kerry-Ann. We are coordinated actually with Kerry-Ann, with Anish, with Raj, so we can all provide set up a capacity building schedule for any organization or group of users or anyone that wanting to go deeper into this matter. So I'm open to just drop me an email or contact George, and he will contact us, and we can coordinate and start right with that. So, and thanks very much for your time and for the invitation to this panel, George.
Thank you, Nicolas. Raj?
I think my colleagues said almost everything. I just posted a link on the chat to close things off. If you take a look at that particular document from Gartner, it will actually guide you in setting up a roadmap for the short term, the long term, medium term, right? And it's basically along the lines of what the entire discussion was about and how Kerry-Ann and Anish and Nicolas just summarized. But it'll actually give you a printed roadmap. You could sit down, read, digest, and of course, expect that to change as the situation changes. So just keep up to date with it and follow roadmaps. I saw someone also posted one from the UK government. So look out for those types of well-informed documents.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Raj. This brings us to the end of our panel discussion this morning, right on time at 12:45, which was our advertised time. It's impossible to cover a topic like this within 90 minutes. This could be a day or 2 or 3 days kind of discussion just to get everybody's input. So I do appreciate very much, first of all, our panelists who gave their time freely, gave their time this morning to, well, we had a couple of pre-meeting discussions. So thank you all for pre-discussions and this actually spending your time with us today. I'm sure the audience enjoyed what was presented. To you, our valued audience members, thank you so much for joining our conference today. And again, all the participation, all the questions that you have given us, you certainly have given us food for thought. And we will probably need to have a follow-up session or sessions on particular areas of what you guys have brought up with us. So thank you very much so much for your time. To the members of the IGF team, the TTMAG, thanks a lot for putting this together. And if you have any comments, anything that you'd want to give us advice on or need answers on, info@mag.tt is where you need to go. And I'd ask you to join the MAG. It's free membership, and you are really kept abreast of the things, the activities that are happening and how you can participate. With that, without much further ado, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Be safe out there, be healthy, and thank you.